Okay, and we are live. Hello, hello.
Hello, everyone.
So I have Noach here with me. Noach of Starforge fame, uh, Sheev Talks community, and I guess just hanging around TK. Uh, although between you and me, TK, I don't know if he's ever watching this. I like you more than I like him. So, you know,
Oh,
it's just
well, thank you.
oh, you're welcome. Just thought I'd put that out there. I mean, who really likes that guy?
Yeah, true. Always plugging his weeb shit. Come on, we're here to talk about true cinema today.
Exactly. Real movies,
Yeah,
not like the slop that comes out these days.
on God.
Well, that is, funnily enough, that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about because, um, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've been going through something of an exploration of a lot of classic movies over
Yeah,
the past few months, right?
I have. Yeah. Started with The Godfather, just the first two movies, and just a few other movies that my film and lit teacher showed us. And over the summer, I've been trying to watch a lot. I've been trying to get a lot of recommendations from people like you and other people in the film sphere I talk to.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing with The Godfather, it's a good place to start, honestly. Um,
Yeah.
because from what I understand, I mean, I'm older than you. Not that I'm like a boomer or anything, but I am older than you.
Yeah.
And The Godfather is, no matter what generation you're coming from, like one of those. The Godfather is one of those movies that is always going to be at the top of the recommendations. It's like, oh, what are classic movies you want to watch? The Godfather is always one that's going to be mentioned, and for good reason. I mean,
Yeah. I
some
was like, I thought it was going to be like, one of those overrated 80 no, it wasn't even 80s, it was 70s, right?
'70s, yeah.
Yeah, it could have come out like 10, 20 years later and I would have known I wouldn't have known at all.
It has aged like astoundingly well.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the production quality, and not to mention just the performances. Uh, I mean, that restaurant scene, uh, it still gets me. Um, it's one of those scenes where, no matter how many times you've watched it, at least for me anyway, like I'm still on the edge of my seat. I'm still like, is Michael going to shoot both of them? Is he actually going to go through with it? And then there's like that part of my brain that it's like, dude, you've seen this movie like 100 times. Like you know what's going to happen. You know that he shoots both of them.
I
Um,
didn't. I was on the edge of my seat for the whole time.
yeah,
Someone
like
in your chat mentioned Godfather 2, and I have to say I loved The Godfather 2 just so much more than the first one. And I loved the first one. I just thought
uh,
The Godfather 2 was just like this flawless masterpiece that I just enjoyed thoroughly, like
it's
100% of the time.
and that's perfectly valid, honestly. Like that is still debated to this day, like which one is better, The Godfather Part 1 or Part 2. Um, I, I think most people are in your camp. Most people say The Godfather 2. I lean slightly in the direction of Part 1, but they're both awesome, honestly. Like they're both such good movies.
Yeah, yeah, they are. I'd recommend them to everyone who hasn't seen them. If you're like, a Gen Z loser like I am who hasn't gotten around to it,
Yeah, because I don't
because
know.
where have they been all my life? Honestly,
Exactly. Because there's some older movies that have not necessarily aged well. They're things that that maybe were groundbreaking for their time, but then they've been surpassed by better techniques, better acting, better whatever. But this is one that still continues to surpass like a lot of movies that come out to this day. Both of them, both Part 1 and Part 2. Um, it's also
I did want to talk about
go
part
ahead.
3 because I haven't gotten around to seeing it yet. I hear a very mixed opinion on it compared to the first two.
Yeah, The Godfather Part 3 is a weird one. I mean, it's undeniable that it's a massive step down from Part 1 and Part 2. But I don't know, I rewatched it again recently, like I would say about a year back. And there were some more things in that movie that I had like more appreciation for compared to the first time I saw it. It's still not necessarily like a great movie, but I think part of the thing too is that we've been inundated with so many like terrible franchise sequels in recent years that it made like The Godfather Part 3 look not quite as bad by comparison. I think that might be part of it.
Yeah, maybe I'll get around to it sometime. I hear there's like there are two different cuts of it. Like there's a director's cut or something.
Yeah, it was God, I don't even know what it was called. It came out not too long ago. There was he came out with a new version that really there's one significant change that happens at the very end of the movie. Um but other than that there's really not a whole lot that differs from it, at least from what I remember from both versions.
Hmm.
Um yeah, The Godfather, it's so funny too because people talk all the time about like troubled productions and how sometimes movies that were a complete shit show behind the scenes like somehow turn out to be good. And I would almost be inclined to put The Godfather into that camp, at least the first one. I don't really know much about the production of 2 and 3, but the production of the first one like had so many problems with it. Like you get the usual stuff like studio meddling and like budget cuts and the studio executives wanting to like fire the director and fire actors and all that stuff. But you also had like they literally had to contend with the mafia itself. Like the mafia itself literally wanted to have that movie shut down, which is just like crazy to think about. It's like these poor guys are having to deal with like the usual problems that come with a film production, but then they're also like having to worry if the mafia might like kill them for making this movie.
Are you familiar with the book of The Godfather? Because I don't know, I haven't read it. I would like to know like just how much it adapts, how much the first two movies adapt, or if the second movie like takes in a completely different direction or has source material of any kind.
I have not read the original book, honestly. Although I know that the book is part of the reason why some of the people from the mafia were so unhappy, because they had some of them, I guess, had read the book, and they were like, "Oh, this paints us in a bad light, so we're going to stop this movie from getting made." Um, and I know that like some of that factors in there,
Yeah, I would
but
assume that had a hand in all the studio problems you said.
yeah, well, and that's something that's always like amused me, like the mafia people getting pissed off about that stuff. It's like, oh, this movie's gonna portray us in a bad light. It's like, but you guys are bad people. Like, what do you expect? It's like they're just depicting the mafia as they operate.
Yeah, a very compelling part of the Godfather movies is just how much like I was invested in bad people doing bad things. Like I haven't really felt this way about a piece of media since like Breaking Bad.
Mm. Well, yeah, like it's bad people doing bad things, but there's the core family. Like there's the
Yeah,
family
exactly.
core.
It was the whole like well developed painting of relationships and family relationships in particular that had me compelled so much throughout those two movies.
Yeah, exactly. And like there's an element of especially with Vito, because as we see by the end of the first movie and certainly into the second movie, uh, Michael, I think he ends up becoming much worse than Vito ever was.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas like Vito, he had certain morals and he had like a moral core that held him back from doing certain things.
Yeah, we
I
get
mean,
to see that develop in the flashbacks of the second movie, which I really thought helped round out this whole saga. And that's part of the reason I like two a lot more is because like it just like fleshes out this first movie, which was already really good by like giving it like extra before and extra after, like just making
hmm,
this whole thing into like this epic saga, really.
yeah, no, it's great. That's one of the things I love about it. I mean, because one of the things that is said about The Godfather Part Two, and it's really true. It's like uh, the first movie was about Vito being in the role of Don, the Don, and then Michael coming into the role of the Don. Uh, Part Two is almost like the reverse, thanks to the flashbacks. It's like Michael being in the role of the Don, but then we see how Vito comes into that role, like in the past. It's kind of an interesting way that Part Two is both a sequel and a prequel to the first one. You don't
Yeah,
really see that a lot. Like I can't think of other examples of movies that have done that.
maybe like I mean, I guess it made me think of Better Call Saul in the moment as I was watching it. With the
Mm,
even though Better Call Saul was a lot less of a sequel, with just like
yeah,
a few scenes in the beginning of every first episode of the season and those last like 3 or 4 episodes.
yeah, absolutely. Um, it's interesting too because there's there are very few examples you can think of characters that were played by multiple actors, and you end up really liking both of them. I think a common example, especially in like the Star Wars community, would be like Alec Guinness and Ewan McGregor, both playing Obi-Wan.
Hmm.
Like that is cited as an example of like two actors playing the same character, and you end up really liking both. I would say the same thing about Vito with Robert De Niro playing the past version in part two, and Marlon Brando playing the original version in part one.
Oh yeah, he was phenomenal. The casting for those movies was just so on point. Like it felt so natural, like a perfect prequel casting.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so interesting too to look back on it because some of these actors are so well known to us now, but some of them were like complete unknowns or largely unknowns at the time. Like they almost didn't go with Al Pacino to play Michael, which is like crazy to think about because
That's crazy.
it's amazing. Yeah, like the studio had no faith in him. Like they didn't want him because he had barely been in anything, and there were some more tried and tested actors that they wanted to go with instead. It's just imagine if they had never given Al Pacino a chance. Like the film landscape as we know it today would have possibly looked very different if that had not happened. You know?
Yeah, I think if every character that I like tend to like from the Godfather movies, or like not like them as people, but like their I think their stories are very well crafted. It's a lot of that is because of the acting, especially when it comes to Al Pacino and Michael. Like he's become one of my favorite characters in all film because not only because of the writing, but because of Al Pacino's acting.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, One of the interesting things with Al Pacino too is that they ended up a lot of movies later down the line, like Scarface and other movies, they had Al Pacino like yelling a lot in a lot of his later roles. He ended up turning into like the crazy, like violent maniac in many of his roles, but that wasn't really what Michael was in The
Yeah, it
Godfather.
wasn't. He was
Like,
like he was like almost scarily calm and collected.
oh yeah, like it was freaky. Like when he would just kind of sit there and stare down someone, you just, especially in part two, after having seen the first movie, you're like, oh god, he's going to kill this guy.
Yeah.
um, and whenever he would rarely ever lose his shit, but when he did, like there was a big reason for it, you know? Like when
Yeah.
he like snaps and hits Kay after she had the abortion, it's like, oh shit, like he never like loses his cool like that. Um,
Yeah, that was yeah, that was crazy.
yeah, absolutely insane. And yeah, Steven's comment, Vito is definitely presented as a man with morals. He wouldn't support selling drugs because he didn't want kids getting addicted. And Vito became Don in part to protect the people of his community. Yeah. Like when he kills Don Fanucci, who is basically just the neighborhood bully, um, and then like takes his place. It's like, yeah, the people welcomed him with open arms because he actually seemed to look out for them, whereas like the previous guy was just extorting the shit out of them.
Yeah, that scene of him killing was very, very cool. Very well shot, I thought.
Yeah, they make it seem like he's almost like an animal that's like stalking his prey, like across the rooftops. Like it
Yeah,
was just
these movies are just a huge inspiration, like when it comes to like even yeah, movies from the 70s still inspiring, you know, up and coming people who want to work in the film industry.
mm,
Very cool to see. I feel like that doesn't happen a lot.
yeah. And I know we kind of like mentioned it, but the like the restaurant scene in the first movie, there's just so many subtle nuances. Like I need to know how many actors over the years, like over the past 50 years, have watched that scene in particular and like observed Al Pacino's performance during that scene with a fine tooth comb and like tried to emulate it, you know?
Yeah.
because it's so great. Like especially when he comes out of the bathroom after he's retrieved the gun, and he sits back down again. Like his whole demeanor has changed. Like now his eyes are darting around. He's not paying attention to a single word that Sollozzo is saying to him. It's just like, because this is the moment of truth. It's like, am I actually going to go through with this? Am I actually going to shoot both of these guys like right in the head in front of me? And then he finally just decides to do it. But it's just, there's so many just subtleties to it.
I already want to give the first one a rewatch, like after the context of the second one. I
feel like
that'll elevate the watching experience even more. I feel like it's like, it'll probably be a cycle. Which one ends up being my favorite? Like after I watch the first one, that'll probably be my favorite. Then I rediscover what I loved so much about the second one every rewatch. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Well, because a lot of the context that you get with Vito, the fact that he came to America with literally nothing. I mean, his whole family was basically wiped out by that dawn in Italy. And then he's like a 9 or 10-year-old kid who comes to America with nothing but the clothes on his back. It really informs like why he cares so much about like his family, because of the fact that he lost his original family. So once he actually has like a wife and kids, like he is so protective of them. And I don't know, just the fact that there is one thing, I can't wait for you to watch part 3, because there is one particular thing I want to talk about towards the end of the movie, as kind of a juxtaposition between Michael and Vito. That this is why I don't necessarily have a huge problem with part 3. There are little things that you could still take away from it, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Like after having seen the second one, it makes you want to kind of go back and watch the first one again.
Yeah, I just want to get lost in Michael's journey again. I feel like I really need to rewatch that that catalyst moment you were talking about earlier. That just transformed him from this like, half and half sort of moral guy to like, the Michael from the second movie.
Yeah, exactly.
So compelling.
Yeah, like there's almost like multiple catalysts. Sorry, I'm just gonna
no worries.
Get my game going. Oh wait, hold on. I did the wrong thing. Apologies. Bear with me 1 second. I'll pretend to act like a normal streamer. Yeah, like there's multiple catalysts. Like there's, his father getting shot, and him thinking that he's dead, and that's kind of the moment that makes it all click for him, where it's like, I've distanced myself from my family up to this point, but now that my father has almost been killed, it's like, no, I need to be closer to them. I need to have their back. And then but the kind of tragedy of that is that it pushes him further and further away from Kay.
Yeah.
Because like at the beginning of the movie during the wedding scene and stuff, it seems like there was a glimmer of hope for them. It seems like they had the potential makings of a good relationship. But then, obviously like his father getting shot, and then him killing Sollozzo and McCluskey, and then him falling in love with Apollonia and then losing her. It's like those events just turned him into someone who's completely unrecognizable from who he was at the very beginning of the movie.
Oh yeah, I definitely need a refresher on those like little brilliant moments. I feel like it's just packed full of so many of those I might have just missed. Like honestly, maybe that's why I don't appreciate it as much as the second one. I mean, yeah, I really liked the first one. I found a lot to love, but like there wasn't. It didn't click for me as the second one did. Like 100% all the way through. That second one was just like one of the best cinematic experiences of my life.
Yeah,
without a doubt. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's what was I going to say? Kind of lost my train of thought. Well, and another thing that's I think really fascinating too about part 2 is how they somehow managed to juggle both plots and make you kind of engrossed in both of them. Now, I think I had a slight preference for the past stuff that was happening with Vito. I don't know how you felt about that.
Yeah, I found both interesting, and I thought they both like weaved their ways into the story that made them feel naturally. Like if I just made any sense, like I felt like they both worked in just perfect synergy to like tell the story.
Yeah, yeah,
I,
I
I,
can.
I didn't really have a preference to one or the other. I found both pretty equally compelling.
Yeah, um, yeah, they're both very compelling. But I think like the past context that you have about the first movie makes you a bit more invested, slightly more invested in the Vito stuff. But obviously, the present tense storyline with Michael is obviously very interesting too, because it kind of like it almost uh, completes his descent into darkness,
Oh
so to
yeah,
speak.
I love a good
Like,
downfall.
yeah, like him killing Fredo at the or well ordering Fredo's killing at the end. That's like the point of no return for him. It's just like,
Yeah, you already know how much I love Michael as a character.
yeah, yeah, it's just incredible. And like you said, I think I have a soft spot for movies that or movie trilogies, movie series, whatever you want to call them, that really kind of uh, are these sprawling epics that have like multiple time jumps and take place over uh, a, a long period of time.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
yeah,
Yeah, that's why my favorite part of Star Wars as a whole is the Knights of the Old Republic timeline from that started like in the '90s and ended around the 2000s.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It
And just
like
having,
sprawls across an entire millennium, had like perfect synergy between the writers, honestly.
yeah, yeah, and obviously, this is a bit more smaller scale than that. In terms of like it takes place in the real world, so to speak. But it still takes place over the course of years, and it follows this family, and their rise and fall and their rise again, um, over the course of like this kind of sprawling story. Including into the third one, regardless of whatever you may feel about that movie. It kind of continues that, because that movie, the third one, I think was made in the '90s, so there's a bit more of a Al Pacino is obviously older, and playing an older Michael. Um, so I mean, like I said, there's interesting things to draw from that one as well. When you're thinking about the whole Godfather story from start to finish, the whole trilogy.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Wait, is my mic coming through? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it is. You're a bit quieter for me than you were before.
Oh, yeah, that's weird. Hold on, let me just fix this.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
testing.
that's better. That's better.
Okay, great.
Um, so what other highlights have you had from like some of the movies that you've watched over the past few months?
Another one was Dead Poet Society.
I don't think I've ever seen that one, to be honest.
Really? Oh wow,
Yeah.
it's incredible. It's I'm sure you've heard things about it. It's Robin Williams as an English teacher teaching a
Mhm.
bunch of like boarding school boys how to, critically think in a school that's like, kind of fascistic um in its teaching system. It's like
Mm.
they don't really encourage that kind of critical thinking that you're supposed to learn from English and poetry. It's an incredible film, and I think it's also 70s, like The Godfather, and it could have been made 10 years later, and I wouldn't have noticed.
Exactly. Yeah. And let's give the '80s credit. There were great movies that came out in the '80s and the '90s. Honestly, I mean,
Yeah,
every era has its great films that come out. But yeah, like the '70s have just some really great ones, some
I
really
definitely need to
excellent ones.
dive into that era more for sure.
Mm. I probably do too, to be honest. Like, I probably only scratched the surface of that era.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, another thing about Dead Poets Society I loved, especially from Robin Williams, like you know him as a comedic actor, probably primarily,
yes.
and he was just so sincere in that movie. His acting was just so phenomenal, and honestly, just his range makes me miss him more every day. He just seems like, such an incredible guy.
Yeah, no, I was so sad when I heard about that. Like it still gets me thinking about it.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, he's been in a bunch of great stuff. Um, I think people really, I mean, obviously there's the comedy element, but I think people really don't necessarily appreciate his full range of acting capability, like beyond just the comedy.
Yeah, and I think Dead Poet Society is the perfect showcase of him as this, really sincere, emotional actor.
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
Another one I gave a watch for the first time was The Breakfast Club. I've heard a lot of good things about that one.
Great film. Yeah,
Yeah.
great film. It's not, I don't necessarily love it in the way that some people do. But it's excellent. It really is an excellent film. I love the cast in that movie, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. Me too.
Yeah.
It did hit home for me, like even, like 30, 40 years later as a teenager today.
Mm.
I think it holds up really well. Another one that everyone should give a watch.
Yeah, yeah. What have there been any stinkers? Any that you're like, I didn't like that, at least in your opinion, like
I can't really think of any recently. Maybe if I just like flip through my letterbox journal.
That's good.
Yeah.
I mean,
Nothing
there would be
like
one that would stand
I don't
out,
think there's any movie I watched like recently that's just like so astoundingly bad. Can you hear any background music on my part?
I hear like a guitar, but that's okay.
Yeah. Hold on. How did you do that background noise setting? Hold on. I just clicked it. Okay, that should be it.
Yeah, I hear it a little bit, but not nearly as much. That's definitely better.
A few more recent movies I gave watches recently are the new Planet of the Apes trilogy and Logan.
Oh, I love the new Planet of the Apes trilogy, to be honest. I don't know how you felt about them.
Yeah, I thought they were great. I thought Rise was good and Dawn and War were incredible. Dawn specifically was like...
Yes. Oh, thank God. I'm so happy you said that, because like for some reason I ask a lot of people about that trilogy and they usually say that one or the other two is their favorite.
Really?
I'm so happy that Dawn is my favorite.
Dawn is like the most commonly agreed upon best one.
It could be. It could very well be. I'll admit that I haven't necessarily paid a huge amount of attention to like any of the discourse surrounding those movies, but yeah, I mean Dawn is certainly my favorite, and I guess I'm not surprised that it is a lot of other people's favorite as well. It has, I think, the most interesting conflicts, like when it comes to Caesar and Koba.
Caesar and Koba.
Yeah,
sure. Their dynamic was incredible. I liked seeing Caesar learn that, of course, don't always trust, your own kind. They can go bad. I think Koba was a great showcase of, just raw vengeance. And Caesar be better because of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Like it's the kind of thing with Koba where it's like you understand why he's got so much hatred in him.
Yeah.
But then he obviously like takes it too far. And it basically twists him into something bad, this is something that's, just as bad as the humans that abused him in the laboratories and stuff.
I like the human cast of Dawn more than any other human cast of the other movies. I just thought the human, especially what's his name again?
The main guy, Malcolm.
No, not the main guy. Hold on. Oh yeah, Gary Oldman's character.
Oh yeah. Oh, Gary Oldman. Yeah, Gary Oldman. He's great in like pretty much everything he does.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the guy who played Malcolm, like he's fine. I wouldn't say he's like the best actor out there, but I'm fine with him, and I think that he did like an okay job.
I liked his character. I liked his bond with Caesar. I thought they bounced off each other nicely, reflected each other specifically, like family protectors.
Yeah, and the fact that they're both like like they're both pretty decent guys at their core, and they don't want to have to like fight each other, but they'll obviously do what they have to do. Whereas you have some people on both sides, like apes and humans, that are just like, yeah, we hate you. We're gonna go to war with you.
Yeah,
Um,
War in specifically was a very good sequel to Dawn, I think.
oh yeah, there's some moments in that movie that really get me too. And it's funny, we're talking about like comedic actors that often get typecast and stuff. Like Woody Harrelson's
Woody
another one.
Harrelson was so good in that movie.
Oh god, yeah, he plays such a good villain. And you start to understand, even if you don't condone him, like you start to understand everything that drives him.
It's weird that you say it's weird that you call out Woody Harrelson for being a comedic actor, because when I was watching it for the first time, my dad said, "Oh yeah, this guy's really good at playing villains."
Really? What other
Yeah,
villains has he played?
I
I
don't
can't think
know.
of any.
I really don't know.
I don't. I'm not saying that your dad's wrong. Like there could just be like movies that I don't know about. I just can't think of the comedic roles off the top of my head.
Yeah,
Or I mean the villain roles rather.
yeah,
Sorry.
but yeah, he was great in that film. I liked his his drive was like really just nonsensical, but like it made sense for the character. Like he's very, what's he call it? Overly emotional. Oh wait, hold on. Steven just commented uh a few of the villain roles that Woody Harrelson has played.
In Wag the Dog, he plays a killing rapist, and he was the lead in Natural Born. Oh, I forgot about Natural Born Killers. Okay, that's right. I've not seen Wag the Dog, but that's interesting. That's a very interesting role that he plays.
But yeah, as I was
Oh,
saying
boy.
about Woody Harrelson's character, his drive as a character, it makes sense for him to be doing that. I think his, past trauma really fleshes out the character and makes for a very interesting conflict between Caesar, because like Caesar struggled to kill one of his own kind, and you have Woody Harrelson here who, killed his own son without hesitation, if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah, it's just like that scene where he's telling him that, and like you could just see the absolute like horror on uh Caesar's face, because the idea of him doing that, especially when he lost his own son, um,
Yeah,
it's just like, oh god.
the whole time I was watching that movie, I couldn't really think of much else besides like The Last of Us Part 2 and
Mm.
how they handled that sort of revenge aspect. Like
Oh god.
it, it's pretty much the same setup.
Yeah,
Family
the
member killed.
execution varies, but
Yeah. Yeah, it was very interesting to see just how well Matt Reeves and the writing team handled that um, topic
well,
compared
and
to Neil Druckmann.
oh god, yeah, yeah, it's like night and day. Well, and the funny thing is, like at the end of the day, uh, he still sort of, you could argue that Caesar still sort of got his revenge. Like he still, he obviously knew that the colonel was infected at that point, uh, and he was gonna like. He was gonna probably die anyway. He was gonna get killed by the rival soldiers that were breaking in. Um, but it was almost, it really shows Caesar's like humanity, despite that, which is funny to say,
Yeah,
but
not
you
to
know what I mean by that.
satisfaction,
Like,
but like he learned to be better than vengeance. I feel like that's a common theme in every Matt Reeves movie that I've seen.
mm, yeah, well, and he, I think for the colonel actually having to live like a while longer with that disease and not being able to speak and stuff, like that's a fate worse than death for him.
Yeah, and Caesar definitely realized that. You can see it in Andy Serkis's mocap eyes.
Yeah, well, and honestly, I there's a part of me that would have like accepted that too. Like if he had chosen like not to hand the colonel the gun and just like let him lie there in his misery, I could have like accepted that too. But I suppose I am glad that he chose to just like give him the gun and let him shoot himself. 'Cause it's like, well, you're no longer a threat, and
Yeah, it's just he sees him as this pathetic figure now instead of
yeah,
the evil creature that killed his wife and child.
yeah, he's just a pathetic wretch now. So it's like it's a mercy to kill him. Like, let him just take his own life, and I won't have to deal with him anymore anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Great movies. Even Rise, which I before the rewatch of the first two movies in preparation for War was surprisingly solid compared to when I first watched it. I mean, I thought it was great in the first watch, but I just forgot like how good of a setup it did for Caesar as a character.
Yeah, I mean, Rise is my least favorite of the three.
Yeah, me too, but I still think it's pretty good. Like,
Yeah.
7, 8 out of 10. I thought it was great.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting to just see how not only the apes gain their intelligence, but how like just humanity like collapses, human civilization really collapses, um, and that kind of collapse is something that continues all the way into war, where now it's more of like a I don't know what you would even call it, like a I don't want to say spiritual collapse. But yeah, like a collapse of their humanity, not in the physical sense, but in terms of like everything else that makes them human. You know,
Yeah.
like the colonel and his diehard men are now they're at the point now where they are desperate to do anything to maintain their intelligence and maintain their survival, that they're like committing horrible acts against like even other humans. It's
Yeah.
just yeah.
And like what I said before about the Colonel's philosophy, like it comes off as irrational, but at that point the whole state of the world is so fucked up that like you don't even not you still feel it, but like you can sort of understand the position they're in.
Yeah, you understand how he would get to a position of like making that kind of choice.
Yeah.
Again, even if
That's very well fleshed out in that scene with Caesar and the Colonel, where he
mm,
just, spills his entire, worldview.
yeah,
And Caesar's just so horrified, as we all are.
yeah, no, it's so good. Did you get a chance to see Kingdom out of
Not yet.
curiosity?
I have been planning to watch it, but what were your thoughts on that?
I liked it. I personally I would put it on par with Rise. Um, so I think a slight step down from like War and Dawn, but it's still a solid movie. Because I definitely had a lot of worries going into it, knowing that Matt Reeves was not going to be attached to this one anymore.
Hmm.
And the fact that obviously Andy Serkis is not going to be in it anymore. Um,
What
but
do you see in the potential of like future installments?
I'm that's a good question. Yeah, I'm pretty. I think they're in a good enough place. I'm pretty happy about the direction that they could go in. I'm pretty confident that they could come up with good ideas after having seen Kingdom.
Yeah, I'll probably tune into Kingdom soon.
Mm.
I'm excited to give this new era of the Apes movies a go, because I haven't actually seen the original Apes movies either.
I would recommend. So, the original Apes movies, they're interesting. The the four, I believe there were four sequels. There was the original
There's
movie, and
like
then there were four
there are
sequels.
like 5 originals and that one 2001 remake.
Don't watch that one.
Yeah,
Don't watch.
I've heard nothing but horrible things.
Do not watch the Mark Wahlberg one.
Yeah.
It's not worth your time. Um, but and I don't know that I would even necessarily recommend the original sequels. The original movie, the first one, is very good. I enjoy it greatly. The sequels, not so much. They got very weird.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I would highly recommend at least watching the first one. There's some very interesting dialogue in that movie and moral dilemmas. The kind of similar stuff that you get in the remakes, similar dilemmas and stuff.
I've seen like bits and pieces of it. I think I saw clips from like a few sequels that touched upon Caesar as a character.
Yeah. Well, so I think Caesar shows up. Caesar doesn't show up, I think, until the fourth movie. In the originals.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known. I just like saw a clip of original Caesar.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and it is kind of funny. I mean, some people have said over the years that the fact that they put the apes in, those like kind of weird outfits and stuff, I mean, obviously they're a product of their time. You know, they couldn't do like the crazy stuff with uh, motion capture and all that came later. So they had to put it was all practical effects to put the apes in the suits and stuff.
I will say about the 2001 movie, from what I've seen of it, the production quality and like the practical effects look pretty good.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And honestly, by that point, eh, you know, that's the one thing that I kind of like as like a bit of a time capsule with that movie is that that was the last apes movie that really used the practical effects for the apes and stuff. So I was like, oh, it's just a nice little nostalgic production thing, you know?
Yeah, I think they look really good.
Yeah, but I definitely prefer the way that they do the apes now, especially if you have somebody like Andy Serkis, who's become really well known as like the motion capture guy.
Oh yeah, speaking of Andy Serkis's mocap,
Oh yeah,
yeah, it's time.
so good. I mean, he's just so good in like everything he does.
His
Obviously,
ending, like
hmm,
in War in particular, of all the scenes, of all the incredible scenes in that movie, that was the one that won me over.
hmm, yeah,
Like
absolutely.
performance is just the best mocap performance I've seen without a doubt.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of thing that I want to pay even closer attention to. If ever I were to like uh, watch all of those movies back to back, all three of them, I would want to pay attention to like the subtle nuances of his performance because it does seem like over the course of those three movies, um, in his like visual expressions and stuff, he looks more human as the movies progress. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely saw even like in the beginning of Dawn versus the end of Dawn, how they like I'm sure you've seen shot comparisons of how they start the film with Caesar as this very animalistic hunter and end it as this human protector.
Oh yeah, and that was absolutely like by design, where they zoom in on his face and
Yeah,
his eyes.
100%.
It's like you would think that those are like a human's eyes, and that's the whole point, you know.
Yeah, so good.
It's just God, those movies are so good. And you know, they're some of the few. I know you haven't watched the original movie, but there's some of the few movies, like remake movies, that actually hold up to the originals, and they could arguably be considered better. Honestly, like they could be considered better than the original movie, and that rarely ever happens these days. It's rare that you get remakes that are better than the original thing.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be very hard to, top Dawn and War as I dive into the first movie.
Yeah, there's some excellent. Like I said, I find it hard to even like compare them. Like I said, when it comes to the first one, the sequels, I can obviously bash certain things about them, but it's hard to compare them in some ways. Like there's certain things that the original '60s movie like has that the new ones don't, and vice versa. So you almost get like different things from them.
Yeah, that's why I'll probably enjoy the 60s movie quite a bit because it's not like I just watched it directly remade. I
Mm.
watched, the context behind it.
Yeah, it's very different, honestly. It's even honestly the movie that it has the most in common with is Kingdom. Uh, but even Kingdom is very different from it. Like it's hard to even compare those.
Yeah,
Because they both take place in the same sort of setting, if you will. They both take place like in a world in which the apes have already become the dominant species, and they're basically like at the top, and the humans are basically, uh, I wouldn't even say second class citizens. They're almost like animals, if anything. Um, and it's interesting to see like how the main human and ape characters kind of navigate that sort of world. Whereas the Matt Reeves trilogy, it's more so like before the collapse of human civilization, where the humans are like the dominant ones, and then like the playing field kind of evens out by the end,
mhm.
or the apes actually become dominant by the end.
Yeah, the apes do become dominant. Like
Yeah,
humanity sort of wipes itself out, literally, as the avalanche wipes humanity out. And
exactly. Yeah.
The apes find their safe haven as Caesar dies satisfied.
Yep. Yeah, like he has saved his family. Well, and there's one moment, one little moment that I sort of like, even at that ending scene right before he dies. Um, I like how he's looking out on his clan, his tribe, whatever you call them,
Mhm.
and he sees like the one girl, the one human girl throughout the movie, Nova. She's like playing with a bunch of like ape children and stuff, and I think she's kind of the representation in that scene of like, well, even though humans have kind of fucked themselves, there is a glimmer of hope that they could, like humans and apes could get along in future.
Yeah, I do like that, especially in a movie series where I'm just, rooting against my own species.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, she's kind of like the representation of that. You got to have like at least one good human in the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, well, that's one thing I kind of like about that series too, is that there isn't really a designated like good species and bad species per se throughout those movies. Like in certain movies, you like there will be an ape main villain. In other movies, there will be a human main villain, and there's a lot of like shades of gray in between.
It's a very long and expansive story about species destroying themselves. Humans
Yep.
do it, the apes do it. It's interesting to see.
Yeah, and the direction that I'm hoping that they're gonna eventually go in with these new ones, um, like the sequels to Kingdom, is that like it. I don't really want to spoil too much in case you ever end up seeing them, but
Yeah, I
the
probably
ori-
won't.
yeah, like the original sequels, uh, sort of end with like an optimistic ending. Now,
For
bearing in
the apes
mind
or for the humans?
for both.
Ah, okay.
Um, Now it takes 5 movies to get there, and there's a lot of like bitterness and conflict and fighting to get to that point. But it basically leaves off that whole series with a somewhat hopeful ending, and I'm hoping that they'll do the same thing uh, with like the Kingdom sequels, and whenever they choose to like stop ending these new
I
remakes.
think I saw a discussing film tweet saying that they were going for like a 9-film saga and they already have the 4 films done.
9 films. Wow.
Yeah, that's what I heard from the studio news.
Oh, you're right. I think I did hear something about that as well. I think you're right about that. That's wow. Okay. I don't necessarily know that I would have gone for 9 movies, but everything needs to be a long franchise now. So I guess that doesn't really surprise me that much.
Hey, but it seems like they have a plan, like,
I
or
would hope so.
sort of a plan. Hopefully they take notes from the other franchises.
It's hard to it's hard to give the benefit of the doubt to a lot of these studios these days,
It is,
because
but then again, like as you say, four bangers.
that's true. Yeah. I mean, I have my issues with Kingdom. There's some of my I have some issues with the humans in that movie.
Mhm.
But I'm not going to get into like specifics there. But
Yeah, we can talk
uh,
about that another time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's still pretty solid, and it was decent enough that I want more.
Hmm.
So yeah, like you say, hopefully they actually have some sort of plan, or just at least some sort of direction they want to go in.
Yeah, and then I also mentioned Logan among those 4
Oh
new movies
yes,
I saw for the first time.
I think I've only seen that movie once to this day.
Oh, yeah, I saw it twice since that first watch like a month ago. I really liked it.
Yeah, very good. Well, and I let it is funny to hear about some of the behind the scenes anecdotes with like because Daphne Keane, who I think that was her first role.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, and like that scene where Hugh Jackman is like screaming at her, and then she like screams back at him in Spanish. Like Hugh Jackman felt so bad about that afterwards. It's
Yeah,
like,
I
oh,
saw that.
I
It
had to
was really
scream at a
funny.
little girl. Yeah, yeah. It's just so funny. I think there was something about her mother.
Yeah,
Um,
her mother saying that like she like called him some insult in Spanish. I don't remember exactly what it was, but
called him the C word. I think it's just like,
nice.
oh, it's good. If that's true, that is hilarious. And it gives me more respect for Daphne Keane. Yeah, Shame about the Acolyte, though, I guess.
Oh yeah, I forgot she was in that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have
she plays Jackie.
Yeah, I haven't seen the Acolyte. But I saw like I think I saw her in the trailer, maybe, or
Mm,
from one of the interview clips. If she even did those, I really don't remember. But
yeah.
yeah, I knew she was involved, but I was just reminded right now.
Well, yeah, I think because Logan was the thing that most people knew her from. But and from what I understand, though, I think she did a perfectly like good job in this for what she was given. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
of all the things I've heard about the Acolyte, the acting doesn't really seem to be the problem.
most of the acting, I think there's a
Oh,
couple in there that are, eh.
okay.
But what are you gonna do? God damn it! Gotta build some fucking siege weapons.
And then, of course, the main event of my cinematic year has been the Lord of the Rings extended editions for the first time.
Oh, there you go. Yep. Got so those are for context, those are my favorite movies of all time, by the way. It's the Lord of the Rings extended editions.
Yeah, the valid pick for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so the funny thing about when I was watching them for the first time in theaters, because I'm not too familiar with the theatrical editions, I'm not as familiar as I should be. So when I was watching those extended scenes, they did. I at first I couldn't recognize them, and like because they didn't feel like extended scenes to me. They felt like so natural in the story.
Yeah. So
Like
I
when
oh
I'm
go ahead.
watching an extended cut of a movie, I can usually tell like an extra scene or two, like, oh yeah, that kind of feels like a bit silly. Like I guess they would cut that out for theatrical purposes, and I never felt that at all for Lord of the Rings.
I think you might if you were to watch the theatrical version, which I would
Maybe I
not
would.
recommend. I wouldn't recommend doing that, by the way. But
I mean, maybe there were like a few, like um, what was it? Frodo and Sam walking through that elf forest in one of the was it? I feel like it was one of the first ones, one or two.
yes, that is an extended scene. So yeah, that is a good catch.
All the stuff with Saruman, which should have been included in the original. I knew beforehand that that was an extended change, but I really didn't know much else.
Yeah, it's hard for me to describe what it is, but I don't know, some of the sound design and just some of the way that it's shot, like it does kind of look like you could tell that it's
I
an
I
extended
could
scene.
tell. I mean,
Yeah,
besides the prior knowledge I had going into it, yeah, I could tell.
yeah, exactly. Um, but there's honestly, uh, even though I would recommend to everybody that they watch the extended edition if you're going to watch the movie for the first time, the theatrical versions are perfectly functional films. Like absolutely.
I feel like they're a
Um,
lot, I mean, they're long movies, but they're a lot easier to digest on a first watch, get the gist of the story before going back for an extended rewatch. That's what I did, and I really don't regret it at all.
yeah.
And
Um,
what was it? One more scene I wanted to talk about was, oh yeah, all the Boromir stuff in the Two Towers.
yes, yeah. The flashback with Boromir and Faramir.
Yeah,
I really like that one.
I thought that was a really wonderful addition. I loved Boromir as a character from my first watch.
Yeah, honestly, I think the that scene really like kind of elevates his character a bit more. I mean, I liked him in Fellowship anyway. I remember as a kid when I first watched the movie, I remember not liking Boromir that much. I was like, oh, he's kind of a dick. Yeah, I was still kind of sad when he died, but I was like, oh, he's so mean to Frodo and stuff because I don't know, I was a kid when I watched the movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I definitely have way more appreciation for Boromir now.
Oh yeah, and all the stuff with the Faramir and the King in the third movie. I feel like that all tied it together really nicely.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how much of the third movie is the one I'm most uneducated about because I just haven't really seen it. My first watch of it was like across like 3 nights, really tired, and I couldn't really tell exactly what's like additional scenes, what wasn't. But in the theater, that was just perfect.
Mm, yeah, the third one. Oh, you saw it when they re-released them.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, that's a good choice. That is a very good choice. I thought about doing that, but I think I got busy and I was like, God, I really
Yeah, and
wanted
you've
to,
probably
but
seen them so many times.
no, I have, but like seeing it in the theater with
It
the
was a
sound and
wonderful
everything.
experience.
Oh yeah, and there's for the most part, from like a production value standpoint, like they've aged very very well.
Oh yeah, they have.
Um, yeah, there are a couple things um, that have not aged well. Like there's this one shot in Return of the King where Frodo is running into the doorway in Mount Doom.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember even as a kid thinking that that looked really weird. It looked like a PS2 cutscene.
Yeah, I feel like I saw that a lot with like maybe Fellowship CGI in particular. But
Yes, I think the cave troll is one of the most common ones that hasn't really aged that well. Um, but the Balrog has, like the Balrog has aged
oh yeah,
astoundingly
for
well.
sure.
I still don't know how they did that back in like 2000.
Yeah, just so good.
Yeah, it's also
Yeah.
amazing how they like
So
it. Oh,
wait,
go
no,
ahead.
you go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say like it's even more impressive when you consider that they filmed them back to back. You know.
And so my first watch of all three extended editions consecutively was without a doubt the best cinematic experience of the year, and that's with Dune 2 and Twisters factored in. It's just
Yeah.
so unbeatable and epic, and I'd recommend it to everyone who's maybe been a bit scared by, extended Return of the King's 4 hour-ish runtime.
Oh, it's worth it. It
It's
doesn't
worth
even.
it. It
You don't
didn't
even
feel like
feel
it was
it
4 hours
necessarily.
at all. Even
Yeah.
like everyone talks about it, it's like the movie that never ends, but like each one of those endings felt so powerful and significant to me.
Oh yeah, I hate the whole argument that it's like, oh, this because you still hear it crop up every now and again. It's like, oh, this
Yeah,
movie
yeah,
never has an ending. It's like, no, there is purpose to each of the multiple endings, you know?
for sure. And they chose the right one to just end it all on with Sam and his family.
Oh yeah.
So good.
Well, but isn't that crazy to think about to what to your point that like there are movies that have come out this year, big epic movies with massive budgets like Dune Part 2, which is incredible. Don't get me wrong. I am yeah, I am by no means bashing Dune Part 2. But the fact that a movie that came out like 20 years ago is basically on par with that or even like surpasses it, it's just that's insane.
Yeah, that's just a testament to how timeless these movies are. I feel like that doesn't come around that often anymore.
And there's so many elements of it too, like uh long man bad. Yeah. All right, TK.
Oh, he's in the chat. How you doing, man?
Yeah. How you doing?
How you
Um
doing, old buddy?
Old buddy, old pal. But yeah, and there's so many elements of that with those movies, like the cavalry charge during the Battle of Pelennor Fields, where King Theoden leads the Rohan charge. That's still to this day, like I have not seen a cavalry charge that has surpassed that
Oh yeah, me
in a
neither
film.
for sure. I'm very curious about the new animated movie coming out later this year. Like,
Yeah,
I'm no Tolkien lore expert, but I would just, is it like something to look forward to as a Tolkien fan? Is it like significant part of the overall story?
I don't know what lore they're drawing from. I mean, I wouldn't call myself like a massive Tolkien expert, um, but I have like a decent amount of knowledge with it. Um, I don't. I think they're drawing from some like very limited material from the appendices that Tolkien wrote like towards the end of the books. That's my understanding of it. So I think they are going to probably take a lot of liberties, and they're going to have to do a lot of original stuff. Like I don't think there's going to be like whole lines of dialogue to really draw from or anything like that.
Yeah, I look forward to it, definitely. I think the visual style is very, very beautiful, and I will definitely be tuning in.
Yeah. Oh, me too. I'm definitely going to see it. I really hope it's good. God, I really hope it's good because I hate Rings of Power a lot.
Yeah, I haven't bothered to give that a watch. Andrew told me all about it.
Well, the Lord of the Rings franchise is in kind of like a, I don't really know what to make of it. I can't really predict anything that they're going to do with it. Because I personally think like the Star Wars franchise is kind of fucked at this point.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah, like that's kind of a conclusion that people, especially people in our sphere, can kind of draw at this point. It's like, yeah, there might occasionally be a decent project, but the franchise is largely fucked. But Lord of the Rings like is not quite at that point yet, and I really hope it doesn't get there.
Yeah, me neither. I love that original trilogy too much. I haven't actually checked out the Hobbit movies. I feel like I don't really need to.
I, it's funny. I want to do a rewatch of them, and I've suggested to some people to do like watch parties of them and stuff because there is a lot to say about them, for better or worse. Um, there are elements of those movies that I like. I like a lot of the cast. I like a lot of the costume design and really just the aesthetic that they chose for a lot of it. But it's a lot of the actual creative choices in terms of story and character and the action scenes that I'm just like, ugh, yikes.
TK says, I want Lord of the Rings to fail just so Chainsaw Man can succeed. Dude, we get it.
Ugh,
Go away.
you and your chainsaw man.
Leave me alone.
But haven't you heard it's not possible for, multiple good things to coexist? Not possible. Can't have it.
Not at all. I love
No.
twisting TK's words. It's my favorite hobby.
Well, he's a pain in the ass, so he deserves it.
True. So have you actually seen Chainsaw Man?
I haven't actually, so I can't comment on this. But
You know what? No, I give it a watch. I'd wholeheartedly recommend it. It's actually really, really good.
oh, okay. Well, I'm just not much of like I'm not like a weeb or anything. Like I
Yeah.
don't watch a lot of that stuff. So
Neither was I, honestly, until I tuned in. I
yeah,
just
and
thought, just as like a piece of art and animation, it was very visually striking, very
mm,
dynamic lighting that you wouldn't typically expect from like, the absurdity of anime styles.
mm,
It felt very real, and I really appreciated that.
yeah, yeah, and on the thing is, when it comes to anime, I've just not. It's not that I don't like it. It's just that I've not taken the time to get into anime.
Yeah, that
Um,
seems to be the thing with a lot of people. And at the point, it's just like that's just like saying someone didn't like take the time to get into like TV. It's just like it's a whole very very expansive medium that can be it can be easily fixed by just one right recommendation.
well, and exactly, yeah, and I've gotten some recommendations for ones that I think really would appeal to me. Um, uh, you
Which one
know,
have you heard? Like,
well, Vinland Saga.
oh, that's an incredible show. I think you would love that one. It's not
Yeah.
like fantasy heavy, which I feel like you'd appreciate more fantasy heavy shows. It's Viking Times, Revenge Quest,
Mm.
great stuff.
Yeah, so
Another very
it's an
visually striking show.
yeah, and it's an anime play on like Viking stuff, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I like that kind of stuff. So honestly, I think you're right. I think I probably would be into it.
I haven't
Um,
given it a watch in quite some time, but I recommended it to TK a while ago, and it just
mhm.
became his personality for like a few weeks.
A few weeks.
A few
I thought you were
weeks.
gonna say like years. That's like a few weeks.
Oh yeah, even he's in the chat. He fucks with it heavily.
Ah, there you go. Okay. All right. I all right. I'll add it to the list. I'll add it to the ever growing pile.
Oh, that's so real.
I think there's another one. uh, People have said that this one is a good starter anime. Cowboy Bebop.
Oh yeah, it is. It's pretty much the most non-weeby anime there is, honestly, besides like the movies from Studio Ghibli.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's another one I'd recommend. Great sci-fi stuff. honestly, it needs a rewatch for me to actually on it thoroughly. But
Hmm.
from what I remember, great stuff.
Yeah, I think the now, God, this is going to be such a stupid question, and people would probably hate me for it. But does the last Airbender count as anime?
Not really. I mean, it's very anime inspired, like the original Teen Titans show, but it was made here by Americans, so I
Right.
wouldn't really call it that. But was
Yeah,
it
yeah.
made by Americans, or was it? Yeah, hold on.
It was made by Americans. Yes.
Yeah, at that point, I wouldn't really call it an anime. The
Yeah, yeah,
definition's changing. It's very heavily inspired by it.
yeah. Well, so I watched that. I mean, I know that's at best I suppose you could call it anime light. Um, and I watched Cyberpunk Edge Runners, and
Oh, I
that's
love Cyberpunk Edge Runners. Great show.
oh yeah, and I went into that primarily because I had been a big fan of the game. But I like appreciate the hell out of that show, like on its own merits, you know.
Yeah, that was me. At first, I wasn't familiar with the games when I first tuned in, and
Hmm.
yeah, it made me fall in love with this wonderful world.
So you played 2077?
I haven't. I've seen like gameplay videos. I really like the overall style of it. When it came out, I didn't really have the means to play it, and
Hmm.
I heard terrible things from the whole launch fiasco.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it obviously had a notoriously bad launch, but which is a shame because God, it is really an incredible game.
From what
And
I've seen, yeah, they've really touched it up.
yeah, yeah. Now that they've fixed a lot of the issues, I mean, they're always in terms of story and characters, it always was a good game from that standpoint. But now, in terms of fixing the technical issues and the gameplay and stuff, it really is phenomenal now. Like now in 2024, it is absolutely worth playing.
Steven in your chat says there's an old anime called Record of Lodos War, which is a very Lord of the Rings style anime, and it's amazing. I haven't seen it. I'll definitely add it to the list.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never heard of that one. I'm gonna have to check that one out. Now, God, what's there's a fantasy style anime that I hear about a lot.
Berserk. It's Berserk.
Well, that one too. But there's, I think there's another one. Jeez.
Berserk, it's like I wouldn't really recommend watching the show as much as I would recommend reading the original manga, which is just one of my favorite pieces of media ever. And the show just doesn't really do it justice. I don't think it's bad. I haven't seen any of the other adaptations, like the movies, other than the show, but
Hmm.
the show from the 90s in particular.
Yeah.
Other fantasy anime,
God, there's a frick. It's on the tip of my tongue. I cannot think of it.
I don't know. I feel like there are a lot of like sort of fantasy anime.
Yeah, but there's one that I hear about constantly. God, I can't think. It'll come to me at some point.
TK says Berserk is so mid in your chat. He literally admitted to it. He literally admitted it that it's better than Chainsaw Man. It's one of the few things he would actually let slide.
maybe that's why he's saying that, just to
Yeah, he's seething
fuck with you.
as
Yeah,
usual.
he's seething as usual. Yeah.
Tantrums and cope.
Oh, seriously, what are you always doing that? Oh, there's a particular map I'm looking for. I can't fucking find it. God damn it. Thus far, this is the game that I played the most on my channel when it comes to my live streams. That's part of many reasons why my channel hasn't really taken off much. I mean, first of all, I don't stream regularly. Second of all, I don't promote my channel as much as I should. And
Yeah,
thirdly, and thirdly, I play games that nobody gives a shit about anymore. So it's a perfect storm of engagement.
For what it's worth, I found your streams really interesting. I like the chill dynamic they have.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Like I said, I'm pretty small fry at this point,
Yeah.
and that's okay. It's mostly just a side hobby for me right now, and it's just super casual. But yeah, I do appreciate that. I just like to, play whatever I want to play, and then talk about whatever's on my mind. Usually something media related.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah. Um, And by the way, another thing I wanted to talk about. Speaking of, TK, I know that you finally started that fabled Starforge podcast.
Yeah,
I've heard
finally.
about it in legends for months, and now it's finally real.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. He was like, "We're ready," and I was just so floored. I fell to my knees. Like, this is really happening. Did Christmas
Finally,
come early?
I've only heard legends of the Starforge podcast, but it's
But yeah,
real.
it's real, and it's gonna be semi-regular. I think we're filming another episode Monday. Um,
Oh,
it's the Chainsaw Man episode. As
oh.
yeah, we're doing that episode 2 right off the bat.
There you go.
Contrary to the name, we're really not going to be too Star Wars focused.
That's okay.
I think I mean, I really want to do Star Wars Visions on the podcast because I really, really like that show. I think it has a lot of great stories to offer. It's a mixed
Mm.
bag, of course, but yeah, another episode we have in mind, maybe with Stir as a guest, would be the current state of the MCU, similar to the first Star Wars one we did.
Oh, no, that would be cool.
Yeah, I assume the Doctor Doom casting would be a subject of discussion on that, and yeah, I'm not very keen on Robert Downey Jr.
So
as Doctor Doom.
oh well, yeah. I don't think a lot of people are.
Oh yeah, definitely not. It's a very common opinion for good reason.
Yeah, Starforge is hella mid. Just shitting on your own podcast, eh? Yeah. So is that like the format that you're gonna do for the podcast? There's gonna be like kind of a broader, like a wider topic that you're gonna go into episode by episode, or are
Yeah,
you
and
gonna
then
cover more of or are you gonna cover more of like a lot of little things?
the broader subject being, something like Chainsaw Man, then we'd
Mm.
have individual sections dedicated to characters or arcs, or I feel like that's another thing we need to set up definitely for the audience watching the VODs, timestamps. Well, they're not VODs, they're just straight up videos. We're not live streaming yet, but
Mm.
yeah, timestamps would definitely be appreciated.
Oh yeah.
We're definitely accepting a lot of feedback from our comments and our friends.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I'll admit I still need to check out episode 1, but I'm going to. It's on
It's a bit
my
rambly, but yeah, for a first episode, I think we did pretty well.
rambly. You're talking to a dude that just sits in front of a game of Lord of the Rings and just like goes on and on and on
Here's the
about
thing
whatever
for the
the fuck.
podcast. I want it to be like, you know, charming and human, like sort of rambly, but I also kind of want it to have a bit of focus.
Yeah.
So I think we need to sort of plan our itineraries and just go from there. Like this topic, we just discuss that for a little bit until it reaches its natural endpoint, and then I think that would help, clean it up as a podcast.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that sounds like a good plan to me.
I'm very excited to, watch it grow. It's our baby.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. Do you have any other, if you don't mind me asking, do you have any other like topics that you're keen to talk about?
We have a few, not a lot. We're open to we're open to a lot of different guests. You're totally more than welcome to hop on for a Lord of the Rings one,
Oh, please, yes.
or
I'll
a Vinland
gladly.
Saga one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, and if ever, and I don't know if this is even in your wheelhouse, but if I would say Lord of the Rings, Witcher, and Cyberpunk, if any of those like ever.
Oh yeah, I'd love to. I don't think TK's played any of the Witcher games. I mean, I think he has the first one, but I would love to talk about either the third game or some of the books on that stream.
Oh yeah, I could go on and on about The Witcher 3.
Yeah, incredible game. I love all that studio does. I would. That's why I have to play Cyberpunk sometime soon after I'm done with like Fallout and Mass Effect. Mass Effect is going to be another subject of discussion on the podcast.
That's another one. That's another one for me. I love that trilogy. I mean, not that I expect you to like bring me into every single one of those over like getting a variety of guests, but I'm just saying that like I'm open to all like 4 of those.
Oh yeah. I think TK has played the first 2 games. I have not played any of the games yet. I mean, I've played a little bit of one. But yeah, I'm very excited to jump into this trilogy.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to the, I guess, a downfall of Star Wars, I've latched on to Mass Effect even more. I mean, I always loved that universe, but I've latched onto it even more because it's like another bastion of like a universe that hasn't been totally fucked, like a sci-fi universe that hasn't been totally fucked.
Yeah, I love that BioWare was able to like create a sci-fi property that even outshined their own Star Wars games. Like
Oh,
I call
yeah.
Mass Effect more iconic than the Knights of the Old Republic games, easily.
It is for me. Some people choose KOTOR as their favorite BioWare game, and that's totally valid.
And right
Get
now,
it.
I find it a bit hard to top KOTOR 2, but Mass Effect, the first two Mass Effect games, from what TK has told me, are incredible, and I'm very excited to jump into them. I already like the gameplay of the first one a lot more than I do any Knights of the Old Republic game.
Yeah.
So it's
And
the
then
story that really needs to win me over.
Mass Effect 2 is my favorite of the three.
Yeah, that seems to be the common consensus.
Yeah, I've
Neither
played
I
that
nor
game
TK
like
have played
10 times.
3. What are your thoughts on 3?
Sorry, what was that?
What are your thoughts on the third game? Because I haven't played that, and neither has TK.
So the third game is controversial because of its ending. I don't know if you've heard whispers
I have
about
not
that.
heard anything about it. I'm going into this completely blind.
Yeah, so the ending of Mass Effect 3 was controversial for feeling like a just not a good ending, very rushed. It leaves more questions than answers. But they did release an extended cut that I think is just it just comes packaged with like the most current version of the game that you
Oh, yeah, I
play.
have that Legendary Edition that packages those.
Yeah. So when you play that game, the Legendary Edition, you'll automatically get the extended cutscenes as
Is
well.
that extended cutscene like fix anything of what you've listed?
It sort of. It makes the ending of Mass Effect 3 tolerable. It's still not what I would call like a good game necessarily, or a good ending. But it makes it tolerable. Whereas like it was not tolerable before the extended cut.
Okay.
I can tell you
TK,
that.
TK talked about Dragon Age Origins as his favorite BioWare game in your chat. Have you played the Dragon Age games?
Yes, I have played all of the Dragon Age games as well. I don't have the same love for them that I do the Mass Effect games, but yeah, they're very enjoyable as well. The interesting thing with Dragon Age compared to Mass Effect is that Dragon Age has you play as a different character in each of them. Like you
In each
don't
of them?
play.
Oh, it's not like an overarching story.
No, Mass Effect is like that. Mass Effect, you can carry over the same character through all three games.
Yeah, that's why the bundle was so appealing to me. I really want to play this whole trilogy in full.
Yeah, but Dragon Age, you play as like a different protagonist each time, but which is kind of interesting in and of itself, though. Like it's different, you know.
Yeah. I think people consider Dragon Age Origins to be of much higher quality than the other two. People seem
Yes.
to not like the second game in particular.
Yeah.
Is that Is that an opinion you share?
Dragon Age 2 is, yeah. The thing is, I prefer the combat in Dragon Age 2. And I prefer the fact that you don't have a silent protagonist. That's just like that's a minor thing. That's like a personal thing. I'm not as much of a fan of silent protagonists anymore.
I could really just go either way, honestly.
Yeah.
And then Inquisition, is there much to say about that one? Because I think it was like a whole different generation than the other two. I think it was like in that cross between Xbox 360 and Xbox One.
Yeah, it came out. That came out in 2014. So I think the PS4 had just come out. It was actually kind of an early PS4 Xbox One game. I think, like I said, Dragon Age 2, they reuse a lot of environments I prefer the combat over Origins, but pretty much everything else in the game is a step down compared to Origins. Inquisition, I think, uh, it it gets closer to the spirit of Origins than Dragon Age 2 does, but it has it has some issues of its own. I like Origins, or I'm sorry, I like Inquisition, um, but I don't feel like any sort of passion about it. I played
TK's
the
in your
game.
chat calling you insane right now. TK, what is your disagreement? I don't know what exactly
Yeah, I
he's
don't know what he's talking
referencing.
about.
Oh,
Origins combat is peak, and I will not. I said it's a personal thing for me. I don't. I prefer like action combat over like strict RPG combat. You could call me a you can call me a loser for that opinion if you want, but that's just how I feel. I prefer like straight up action combat.
that's how I feel too. That's why Mass Effect's gameplay is a lot more compelling to me than KOTOR's.
Yeah,
And I will shill KOTOR 2 any day of the week. It's probably my favorite RPG at the moment.
yeah. Silent protagonists are better
Oh,
than
shut
voice
up. You be a silent protagonist, TK.
I mean, so I mean, joking aside, I get that perspective, because it's I don't know. I guess I don't even know how to put it. I guess it allows more of the blank slate element of like an RPG character than
Yeah,
like
I find a lot to love in both of them, especially in like very very story heavy RPGs. I'd like a character in the wheel, like
yeah,
one that I can like latch onto and not just like project as I usually do to silent protagonists.
yeah. And again, like it is just like a personal thing for me.
Yeah.
But it
But yeah,
aroused.
lovely games.
Yeah. Yeah. BioWare, they're a weird one these days. I mean, they've had a few kind of stinkers in recent years. They're definitely not the company that they used to be. Um, a lot of the original head honchos that made some of their great games, like KOTOR and the original Mass Effects and stuff, have kind of moved on.
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
seems to be
and
the case with the sequel and Obsidian Studios.
yes, but I
I
don't know.
think they've all moved on to like a different studio, and they're working on this RPG that's supposed to come out this year. I don't remember what it's called.
Well, there is a new Dragon Age coming out this year.
There is, yes. I
Yeah,
just learned about that a few days ago.
yeah,
It's
Dragon
called
Age
PK.
Vilgard.
Yeah, I'm interested to see the future of what these creatives will do in
Yeah,
the development sphere, and of course the future of the franchises.
yeah, I hope so too. I hope that they can just kind of turn it around a bit. And I don't think it's ever. I'm not expecting them to make a game like Mass Effect 2 or KOTOR 1 and 2 again. Um, but I'm hoping that they could at least like continue to make worthwhile RPG games.
Yeah, me too. There's supposed to be another Mass Effect coming soon, I think. Or
Yes, yeah,
coming.
they announced one. We're probably not going to get it for a while. Um,
Have you played Andromeda? I think that's a bit of a controversial one, or maybe it's just like constantly called bad by everyone.
it is controversial, yeah. I yeah, it's got a boatload of problems. I think I'm more uh, I don't know, forgiving of that game than a lot of people are. But there's no doubt that it has issues, especially at launch with like the facial animations and stuff.
Uh,
They were really bad.
Maybe they touched it up after launch. Who knows? Was like the story of any concern compared to like? I mean, I don't expect it to compare to the second one, as you say is like the best one. But how does the
There's
story compare?
there's some weird like lore discrepancies here and there. Um, it also just like I don't know, even just the general premise of the game is a little hard to swallow. Like this idea that thousands of people like left the Milky Way galaxy to go to another one, and this is an event that occurred between, like, I think it's between Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect 2, if I'm not mistaken, or between Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3. I can't remember when that took place. But the fact that this like big migration of people happened, and we just never heard about it, and like the original games, it's just a little, I don't know, it's a little hard to reconcile.
Yeah, that I assume that would be like my 100% fundamental changes to the world to be, shown to us.
Yeah. So there's some weird stuff like that. There's some weird things with the new one of the new main species, the Angara. But there's some things that I like in it too. I appreciate it for what it is, even if it is a step down from the trilogy. Well, yeah. So TK, Andromeda, it does take place 600 years after Mass Effect 3, but when the arcs depart the galaxy happens, I believe, between Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3. And then when they arrive in the new galaxy, that is 600 years later.
Yeah, Steven in the chat is talking about Dune Awakening. I'm not usually one for MMOs, but I think it looks pretty promising.
I've heard the name, but I don't know anything about this. I think
there were a few like recent either gameplay or showcase videos. Maybe a few days ago.
Oh, that's why people are talking about it. Okay.
Yeah, I think it looks pretty good. I will definitely be playing it with Andrew and TK and whoever else decides to tune in.
Yeah.
I think it'll be fun.
Yeah. I definitely need to check it out now too. I vaguely remember them announcing this game, or there being like a rumor about it. But then, like I said, I've just not heard anything about it since, and I didn't know that they revealed some new information about it. So yeah, I got to look into that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Andrew must have posted a link to the videos in Clubhouse.
Yeah. Because that's who I think I saw. That's who I saw it from, was Andrew.
Yeah. Very excited for some more Clubhouse game nights.
Holy shit! Get the fuck out of my base, you bastards!
So what else is there to talk about? Oh yeah, when I was asking for classic movie recommendations, you recommended Heat.
Yes. Yes. Yep. That is my favorite heist movie of all time, easily. I love that movie. Like there is some phenomenal character work in it. Al Pacino and De Niro are both phenomenal in that. I mean, we were talking about The Godfather earlier. It's interesting because I think up to the point of that movie coming out, Pacino and De Niro had not been like, they had never directly worked with each other, because they were both in The Godfather Part 2, but they never shared a scene together since De Niro was playing young Vito.
Yeah.
And so I think like that really turned a lot of heads, like in a good way, when that movie came out. It's like, oh shit, like De Niro and Pacino are in a movie together. And it's they are really good. They've got some great scenes together. Because De Niro plays the main character, who's like a bank robber, and Pacino plays the cop who's going after him. And
it seems like an interesting dynamic.
Oh yeah, so good.
Yeah, very excited to check that one out.
Yeah. Really phenomenal. It also has like the thing with Michael Mann. I don't know if you really know much about him as a director.
Maybe I've seen one or two of his movies, but I really couldn't tell you anything about him.
Yeah, his sound design is incredible in a lot of his movies, especially like gunfights. Like yeah, like gunfight scenes. He does something with the sound design that very few others do. I don't know what it is. I don't know how he gets like such good gunshot sounds in his movies. But he just always manages to pull it off for some reason.
Yeah, very excited to check those out. Did you recommend other movies, or I can't really recall. I think you might have listed a few, but Heat was the one takeaway that like he seemed to be most passionate about.
Yes. There was Heat. There were the Alien 1 and 2.
Oh yeah, I need to check those out, especially catching up for Romulus. I
Yeah.
haven't seen any Alien movies. I'd really like to check those out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, those are both really good. The first two Terminator movies,
Oh yeah, I've seen those. I mean, I've actually just seen the second one.
really good, right?
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah. In fact, let me get it on my phone. I want to pull up the recommendations that I sent you again.
I can probably pull those up. I still have the tweet bookmarked.
Okay. Yeah. Mm,
Okay. See where you are in the replies. Okay. Heat, Alien and Aliens, Gladiator. That
Oh,
was
yes. Well, and
Shawshank Redemption.
well, and really quick, incidentally, the Gladiator 2 is coming out this year. So
Yeah,
I
I
don't
should
know.
probably get that before it comes out.
I have no idea if it's going to be good, but you know, it's as good a time as any if a sequel is coming out, I guess.
Let's see, other ones on this list. Goodfellas. I definitely have to dive into Scorsese's filmography.
Yeah, Scorsese's phenomenal. Like he's a phenomenal director. I don't necessarily love his movies as much as other people do. Well, my favorite Scorsese movie is actually The Departed, which I think is one that I gave you.
That is on the list, yeah. I didn't know that
Yeah.
was Scorsese.
Yep, that's a Scorsese movie. I love that one. I love Goodfellas as well. But yeah.
Let's see. Sicario. I assume you're talking about the Denis Villeneuve one.
Yes. Oh yes. God, that movie has so much like tension in it.
Yeah, I should probably get on those.
Irishman and Killers of the Flower Moon aren't his strongest stuff. I like The Irishman. I agree that both of those movies are not Scorsese's strongest. I liked The Irishman, even
I
if
hear
it was
really good
about.
things about the Irishman.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely ran a bit too long. You could have trimmed stuff out of it, but I liked it for what it was. It felt like the end of an era to me. It felt like the end of like the mafia movie era. You know what I mean? Because probably the last movie that we're going to get like all of those big mob
So it's
movie actors
like
in.
a send off to that
Yes,
sort of world
exactly.
of filmmaking. Yeah, I think with that in mind, I will probably appreciate it more.
Yeah, like because it's the only movie that I think had Pacino, Pesci, and De Niro in it.
TK
So
says Noach is a fraud who refuses to finish the Shibuya incident arc. I'm trying, but I'm I'm watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine for the first time. It's a very funny show. Yeah, I have to finish that arc from Jujutsu Kaisen. I don't know if you've heard anything about it.
I haven't actually.
Yeah, it's good. I like it.
Oh, nice.
First 5 episodes of the second season, which was like the first arc, just so much stronger than anything else so far.
Hmm.
That's kind of what's making it a bit hard to continue, but it's good. It's good stuff.
Oh, cool. Yeah, and you mentioned Shawshank Redemption. God, that movie is so phenomenal too.
Yeah, that's another one. I definitely have to check out.
Yeah, so my top 5 movies. I mean, I'm sort of cheating here, and I'm counting the Lord of the Rings all as one. But yeah, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, uh, Heat, Gladiator, Shawshank Redemption, and probably this is tough. I would say probably Saving Private Ryan.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's another one I will have to watch, along with Schindler's List.
That's yeah, both phenomenal movies. Those are my two favorite Spielberg films.
Hmm. Oh, Casino is another movie I have to watch. Steven just pointed that out in chat.
Yeah, Casino's great. Well, and it had some of the same people from Goodfellas in it, so it was kind of
Yeah,
a
it had actual mafia people giving him advice on the films, so they're just like really accurate.
well. It's funny. The same thing sort of happened with the Godfather films. Like I mentioned that the mafia wanted to take that movie down, at least initially. But then I think once they figured out that it was actually shaping up to be a good movie, they softened up on it. um, but yeah, I think a real life one of the most like infamous gangsters, uh, Meyer Lansky. He and Lucky Luciano were kind of like the founders of the mafia. In some sense, the two of them
Mhm.
are kind of credited with like creating the mafia as we know it. And he was the direct inspiration for Hyman Roth in the second movie. Um, he watched The Godfather Part Two, and he watched like the depiction of Hyman Roth, and I think he wrote like a letter to Coppola, the director, being like, you nailed me pretty well. You did a pretty good job. I never really took my shirt off and had meetings with people like that, but other than that, I think you depicted me pretty well.
TK is very surprised I haven't seen Schindler's List or Saving Private Ryan. Yeah, I haven't seen them. Whatever, I will watch them for sure.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he's getting caught up. Okay, he's been
There's a
he's been
lot
on a
to watch.
roll.
A lot of them are your recommendations, dude.
It's a lot of good movies out there.
Yeah, I'm very excited to dive more into them.
Oh yeah, definitely. Is there anything else that you're looking for in terms of new movies? Is there anything else you're looking forward to this year?
This year I really couldn't tell you. I'm watching the Batman re-release because I haven't actually seen it in theaters.
Mm.
So I'm looking forward to that. It's in a few days actually.
Oh, oh,
But besides that, no, not really from this year.
okay. I think the only one I'm interested in, well, actually two. I'm like vaguely
Oh,
interested
besides Lord of
in.
the Rings, of course.
Right, yeah, that's one of them. That I was going to say that's one of them for me as well. The Lord of the Rings movie and the Gladiator 2. I think those are the only two that I'm interested in.
Yeah, as I said, I have not played. I mean, not played. I have not seen the first Gladiator.
Yeah, see, there you go, Stephen. You work on film sets and you're on breaks. A lot of us exchange our must-see film lists.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
yeah,
my English teacher from last year gave me a whole list of must see films. This sort of kicked off my whole classic movie adventure with the first two Godfathers. Those were on it.
mm-hmm.
Funny enough, the whole Lord of the Rings trilogy was on it.
Oh yeah. Well, good. Your teacher has good taste.
Yeah. He hasn't actually seen or read Dune, so I gave him a copy of Dune before the year ended.
Oh, there you go. I mean, that'll
Just
get
for
you
the Dune
extra
agenda.
credit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that'll get you extra credit. You give him your recommendations, and then if he ends up liking the movie, which I'm assuming he will, you
He
get
probably will,
yourself some
yeah.
extra
So,
credit.
of course.
That's how that works.
Bribery. Hell yeah.
Yeah. Bribe with good movies, good movie recommendations. I wish that's how it's worked. Jesus. Well, it's funny. I mentioned Alien 1 and 2. Um, the second Alien film has like the little girl in it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Newt, and she I think ended up leaving acting after she did that movie. She ended up eventually becoming like a school teacher when she got older, and
Interesting.
yeah. So it's she's one of those actors that got out early and didn't really continue the career.
Stephen in chat asked how many Dune books I've read. I've read the first one. I don't want to read Messiah until the movie comes out. I want to go into that completely blind.
Ah, wise.
Yeah. I love these movies so much.
Yeah. No, they're great. I love the new ones. I love the Villeneuve Dune movies.
Yeah,
Um,
they're my drive at this point. Like I have to live to see Dune Messiah unfold on screen. I don't know what I'm
yeah,
gonna do if I can't.
no, me too. Yeah, I wouldn't want to spoil it either. But yeah, I was gonna say like when she became a teacher, she would have like I think she taught fourth grade, so she would always have like her fourth grade students who probably shouldn't be watching a movie like Alien and Alien Two. It's like a rated R movie, but they would like watch the movie and come up to her and be like, "Can you sign our movie?" It's like, and like these are her students, and she's like, "Okay, after class." Just a fun anecdote that I think she told during like a Comic-Con appearance.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, but
Okay,
yeah,
I do think I have to head out
yeah, yeah,
relatively soon. This has been really fun. Thank you
yeah.
for hosting, and yeah, really chill. Love this whole format of just chill gameplay and chatting about media.
Yeah, thank you. No, and thank you for sparing the time. I'm glad you had a good time. It
Yeah,
was good talking with you. And I'm definitely gonna watch Starforge episode 1. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that podcast grows.
yeah, I await your feedback.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I'll be sure to provide it.
Thank you, thank you.
All right. All right,
All
thank
right.
you, Noach. I'll see you around.
Yeah, see you, dude.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So hungry. Barely eaten anything today. Gonna have to go get some dinner soon. I'm probably gonna wrap the stream here. We just close out of my game. For anybody who watched and commented and tuned in, thank you. I'm pretty irregular with my schedule. So it's kind of like you see me when you see me type of deal. But I'll try to post some sort of announcement the next time I stream or whatever. So I'll catch you around next time. Thank you for joining me. Bye.